Hello fellow riders and welcome back to Airhead War. In our last episode we were able to complete our disassembly process of 1977 R75/7, and from now on we will move toward more of a bench work. So the next thing that we are going to do is inspect and restore final drive. When working on final drive, it's a good idea to fabricate a plate like this. There are some options available online made of steel that are really nice. I made by myself this one from like 3mm aluminum. It's sufficient to hold it in place, and it's very convenient when you are working on a final drive that you can actually clamp it in vise and then leaves you space to work on a final drive. Before actually placing it in a vise, I would like to remove the rear brake actuation arm. Okay, since brakes that I removed from a final drive were new, installed by previous owner, it's a good idea to mark exact position of this actuation arm when you are putting it back together, that it goes to the same place. Okay. Either a scriber or a center punch, you just make a small dot and that should be sufficient. There it is. Okay. Now we can clamp it in a vise. Okay, we have it stable in a vise. Now it's time to start removing these nuts. .30mm socket. So splines look in really good condition. These are kind of weak point of these older final drives. Luckily we won't need to do any kind of repair. They tend to deteriorate to the moment when they completely shear. Well, these ones are in really good condition. Okay, all nuts out, all washers out, and now essentially there are two threaded holes like M5 where you can insert smaller like M5 bolts and then pull this cover off. But before doing that, I'm just going to heat it up a bit so it's easier to pull it up. 8mm socket. We will slowly drive one and the another side until it's free. Okay, it's out. Okay, ring gear looks in terrific condition. Okay, that's great. We will replace this gasket and of course clean everything. But at this point, we just want to remove the ring gear. Okay. You just smack it with a rubber mallet. It should fall out. Okay, there it is. Okay, we will clean everything nicely, and then cover has a seal that we are going to replace. There's some oil inside that I want to wipe, because next thing that I'm going to do is flip it upside down so I can continue working on it. Okay. Don't lose this thrust washer. I'm going to put it the same as it was inside. I'll lay it on a bench. Okay. Now inside we have a bearing that needs to go out, and then under the bearing there is a seal that we also want to replace. In order to do that, we need to flip everything and then heat again, remove this pin, this bushing, and then proceed with the bearing removal, and finally we'll be able to press out the seal. Okay, so to remove this bushing, we will need to heat it up again. This bushing is out. And now we will continue heating it. It needs to be really hot in order for a bearing to come out. So this is a proper way of removing this bearing without destroying it. This is a needle bearing. Usually they are very expensive, and also they usually don't go bad. So why not saving one if you can? And the way how to do it is properly heat up housing, and then bearing just falls out. So what we are going to do next is remove pinion gear and also seal on that side. Usually here, just under the this seal that we just removed, there is a small hole, and that hole is used for oil. Basically, if it gets passed through that seal, it leaks through the hole, so you notice it. There's another hole on a cover that we also need to take a look at it once when we remove the seal, and that one is used when oil passes that seal. It essentially goes out instead of to your brakes. So we need to make sure that both of those holes are clean. And the way how to do it is you take a really small Allen wrench and then just clean the passage. This one was completely clogged. So now it's time. The only remaining basically part is to remove this pinion gear. To remove that guy, we need to remove this 24mm nut. And since this freely spins, what we need to do is a block gear to be able to remove the nut. To do that, there are different tools available. One of them is this nice design from CycleWorks. How this actually works is you take off these two nuts. And then you place a tool. Okay. And now you should be able to unscrew this nut, which sometimes is really hard to remove. it goes. Okay, here's washer and gear. And now there is a seal here. In order to remove the seal, you need to remove this slotted nut. And there is also a special tool for that one. Okay. So here it is. Also from CycleWorks. Basically big nut with threaded posts. So essentially you place it inside. So when tool is fully seated, you take 41mm socket and unscrew it. There it is. Okay. And nut with seal is out. Okay. So final thing that we are going to do before we clean all parts is we are going to remove the seals from cover and from slotted nut. This one is out. We will clean everything and scrape the gasket. And this one, I guess, needs to go in a press because it doesn't go out so easily. Okay, this one is out as well. So after disassembling final drive, I gave really good cleaning to the cover and also the housing. I inspected all parts and there was no damage, neither to the this ring gear. Splines are in terrific condition. This bearing as well, there is no free play at all, so we can definitely keep these components together. There's no reason of replacing them. Needle bearing is in perfect condition as well, and also pinion gear. So we can now start resealing the final drive and putting everything back together. I already put a seal on a slotted nut. This one, if you remember previously, did not want to come off easily with a seal driver and a hammer, so I used the press to press it out, and I also used the press to press it in. First we will start with this big seal that goes on a cover. Spring goes up, and I believe we will be able to use a standard seal driver to do this. Okay, so we'll just start it like this by hand. And then, since this driver is a bit smaller, we will need to do one side at a time. So just make sure that seal is not protruding this part of a cover, and that actually hole should be visible, because if oil passes the seal, it should actually go out here instead of clogging your brakes. Okay, so this one is ready. So now we are going to move toward housing. First thing that we wanna place here is the small seal that goes all the way down. Always first put it by hand, and then we'll use seal driver. Okay. Again, spring side goes up. So next thing we need to do is to place bearing inside, and to do that we will need to heat up the housing. Not too much, we don't want to destroy the new seal that we just placed. So now when we started this bearing, we will heat up the housing again, and then just drive the bearing down with a standard seal driver. Okay, bearing is seated. So next, while everything is still hot, we are going to drive bushing inside. And just slight taps. That's it. Okay. Now, thrust washer we previously removed goes like this. And then gear ring slides right in. There it is. Great. Okay. Now we have a couple of shims that go on top of a bearing. It's a good idea to grease them so they stay in place when you put cover. So just a couple of taps of grease. that holds it in place. Okay. That's one. And here is another one, a bit thinner. So next, what we are going to do, we are going to place a cover on top of final drive. But before doing that, we want to place a new gasket. Okay. Nicely down. Perfect. And now cover just slides on top of this, but these splines can be very sharp and they can damage newly placed seal, and for that reason we need to use some kind of protection. I would like to use this opportunity to thank to William from Boxer 2 Valve on a really cool idea. Essentially any kind of can of your favorite drink that you slide through the seal, and then it fits on top of splines. Okay, there it is. Fully seated, and now we can just slide it down. Okay. So now we are going to heat up a cover so it expands a bit and slides over a bearing. Okay, that should be enough. And we can go ahead and start tightening. There it is. Okay. We will torque everything to spec once when it cools down, and now we can move toward pinion drive and work on that one. So now when everything cooled down, we can actually torque these nuts. 30mm socket, and torque is between 18 to 21 Newton meters, and I'll use 20 Newton meters for this one. I'll do it in crisscross pattern. That's it. Next thing that we are going to do is we are going to put this retaining ring or slotted nut back. Okay. Tool snaps inside like this. Snug. And now we are going to torque it. So 100 to 120, middle value is 110, that's 81 foot-pound. Okay, here is inside. Now there is a small plastic seal that actually did not exist, which goes right here. A washer and a nut. This nut is 100 to 110. You can do 105 and that's 77 foot-pound. Finally, we will need to grease splines, and with that we are done with resealing the final drive.